He's the man who killed Gwen Stacy.
We got a lot of hate mail.
Gerry Conway has been a professional comics writer since he was in high school. Before he was old enough to legally drink, he had co-created Marvel's Werewolf by Night. During his insanely prolific career, he's written almost every superhero book and co-created dozens of comic book characters, including Vibe, Man-Thing, Power Girl, The Secret Society of Supervillains, The Punisher. He devised the original Clone Saga and even thought up the Spider-Mobile.
My name is Mike Avila.
I write and talk about comics for a living, and occasionally I even get lucky enough to hang out with amazing creators. Let's go behind the panel with Gerry Conway.
You've been in the business forever. And you
It feels like it, yes.
You started as a teenager. How did that happen?
Jim Shooter was getting work at DC Comics at 13. I was about 14 at the time, and I said, oh, you know, if he can do it, I can do it. DC Comics at that point was doing tours. Once a week, I would go into Manhattan and pitch stories to the different editors there who I guess tolerated my presence. A guy named Murray Boltinoff, who was an editor, who was under the mistaken impression that I'd already sold the story. He asked me what my rate was, and I said, what's a rate? And Murray realized that he had bought my first story, which kind of horrified him.
Conway quickly gained a rep in the tightly knit comics business, and soon Marvel Comics' editor-in-chief, Roy Thomas, came calling.
I did the Marvel writing test. The way this worked was you got the artwork and you were asked to dialogue it. It was a Gene Colan sequence. It was basically Cap walking along streets in Manhattan, rooting about his fate as a man out of time. And I dialogued it. I actually think it was just as good as what Stan had done. And Stan said, yeah, it's all right, you know, it's all right. And Roy said, well, you know, I think he writes really well for a 16-year-old. And Stan said, can't we get somebody who can write well for a 21-year-old?
Stan soon came around and hired him. After writing issues of Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, and the debut issue of Tomb of Dracula, Conway was tapped to be writer of Amazing Spider-Man, replacing the only writer the title had ever had. That's right, Stan Lee.
One of the great things about being so young at that time was that I was completely clueless about what my competence level was. And I've been writing Thor for almost a year at that point, and obviously was given this book because Stan and Roy had confidence in me doing it. But fortunately, I had John Romita as the artist on the book, who was given first position on the credits because he was going to be guiding me. And that really helped a lot in that first year that I was working on the book. One of the great things about Stan was that when he handed off a project, he basically said, now it's yours. He never second-guessed you or came in and criticized your work. I mean, if he thought you were doing a bad job, you were gone. But he wasn't going to nitpick, and he wasn't going to second-guess a choice. I mean, if it was a major move, you know, such as killing off a major character, let's say, Stan wanted to weigh in on that. But what villains you were going to do, what types of stories you were going to do, that was pretty much up to you.
Within a year, the rising star would permanently leave his mark on the Spidey mythos with the landmark two-part story, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Conway recalls how the groundbreaking tale came together.
Less than a year into your run, you decided to kill off Gwen Stacy.
Yes. This was at the transition period where John was going to be leaving the book. But before he left, John was saying, you know, we need to do something to shake up the readers. So he thought we should kill off a major character. His choice was Aunt May. And I felt that Aunt May was too crucial to Peter's origins and too useful to inspire stories and to create drama. I had always felt that Mary Jane Watson was a better potential romantic foil for Peter than Gwen Stacy. In my view, you know, a more independent and fun character than Gwen, who seemed to be the epitome of the good girl. And Mary Jane was sort of the epitome of the slightly not so good girl. And I thought that was more interesting as a friction with Peter. So I said, well, what about Gwen Stacy? And we ran it upstairs to Roy and to Stan, and they both signed off on it. Gil Kane drew the art, I scripted it, it went out, crap hit the fan. And people were very, very unhappy. We got a lot of hate mail, I mean a ton of hate mail, and I actually had to avoid going to conventions for years. Stan, too, got a lot of negative feedback, and he dealt with it by saying that it had all happened while he was out of town. I thought we did a good job with the story, so I wasn't ashamed of it in any way. One of the things that I wanted to get across in that book was that being a hero is not about always succeeding. Being a hero is about sometimes failing in such a disastrous way that getting up the next time and trying again is the real heroic moment. Peter feeling regret over missing the opportunity to save Uncle Ben motivated him to become Spider-Man. But what made him continue to be a great hero was that he went back after failing to save the woman he loved. And, you know, that's an act of true heroism. He tried to save the day, and everything wasn't fine.
Just a few months later, Conway helped bring another soon-to-be Marvel icon to life.
I had done a little rough sketch of a guy all in black with a skull on his chest, and John Romita took it and drew this truly iconic, cool outfit. And we didn't have a name, so, you know, we were batting names around, and my editor, Len Wein, at the time went to Stan with me, and we were saying, you know, what should we call this guy? And Stan says, well, what does he do? And he says, well, he goes out and he punishes people for being bad guys. And he says, well, there's your name. He's the Punisher. And so from there, we took the character, and as I was writing the script, I realized this guy is too cool to just make him a one-shot throwaway. I didn't see him as a hero, you know, at the time. I saw him as an anti-hero, and I thought that was a fabulous potential for stories.
Conway's success eventually led to a promotion to become Marvel's editor-in-chief, a job he held for a whopping 6 weeks in 1976. And while that didn't work out, he did remain a prolific writer. He actually had bylines in 6 Marvel and DC comics, cover dated January 1977, an absolutely insane workload. In 1976, Conway received one of the biggest assignments of his career, scripting the oversized Treasury team-up Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man.
I had just left Marvel to go to DC. I was also an editor for DC at that time, and I wanted to work with Ross. And there was a tremendous logic to this because Ross was one of the few artists who had actually drawn both Superman and Spider-Man. I mean, the challenge for us was to do a story where each character got the same amount of space in the book, the same level of impact, you know, the same contribution story, the same number of big splashes, you know, and so on. And to somehow justify the idea that in a battle between Superman and Spider-Man, that Spider-Man wouldn't be knocked out in the first 5 seconds. And that's what we did. And basically we wanted to have fun because we knew that this was the ultimate fanboy experience.
Conway already had experience crafting a DC Marvel team-up. You see, back in 1972, he, Steve Englehart, and Len Wein concocted the first unofficial intercompany crossover. Conway remembers the circumstances of how the talented trio pulled off this infamous comics caper.
For several years, Rutland had hosted a Halloween parade. It became almost an annual thing where we would all gather ourselves, and Denny O'Neil went with us one year, and he decided to do a Batman story set in Rutland, Vermont, featuring some of us. Well, the subsequent year, Len Wein, Steve Englehart, and I drove up, and we came up with the idea of why don't we do a crossover between our 3 books set at Rutland, Vermont. We had all 3 of us appear in each other's books as background characters. Len did that in the Justice League. Steve did it in Amazing Adventures, where he was writing the Beast, and I did it in Thor, and we had an overall storyline that all kind of interwove, and we didn't tell our editors. Roy realized that our stories were interwoven, that Thor and the Beast were interwoven, but Julie Schwartz had no idea. And when he found out, he was so upset, he almost fired Len off the book.
Did you find out when the book hit the stands?
Yes, yeah, and he was starting to get letters. He got letters from people who were saying, oh, wow, this is so cool that DC and Marvel collaborated on this project. And no, they had not.
By the end of the 70s, Conway was exclusively writing for DC. His 8-year run on the Justice League title is considered a high point for the series.
I really, really loved writing the book. So passion probably had a lot to do with it. I liked the idea of taking the lesser-known characters in the book and focusing attention on them. Characters like the Red Tornado and Zatanna. I saw the opportunity in writing these epic stories that had a real personal touch to them through the eyes of these lesser characters. Writing Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman in the Justice League was always fun, but it wasn't, for me, the main focus.
Aquaman took a prominent role. He had never really taken a leadership role in the League.
No, he hadn't. It was odd because he's the king of Atlantis. I mean, if anybody should be a leader of the Justice League, it should be the guy who's actually a leader. You know?
Conway would go on to co-create Firestorm, another notable superhero who's found mainstream success on DC's Legends of Tomorrow television series. But it's the longevity of another one of his co-creations that surprises Conway the most.
Killer Croc is a character I created for Batman as sort of a way to take Batman out of his comfort zone. Batman's comfort zone is fighting crooks on rooftops. So I wanted to create a character that would put Batman down in the least hospitable place for a bat, in a sewer. And that was the reasoning behind, you know, trying to find this other character. Also, Batman had mostly fought villains who were clever, you know, and had master plans and weird gimmicks and all that. I wanted somebody who's just basically going to smash Batman into the wall. You know, this is before Bane. So this was just going to be the guy who was going to just beat the crap out of Batman whenever the two of them encountered each other. For some reason, this character, I think because he was picked up by the animation studio for the first year in Batman, has become the most popular character that I've created for DC. He's in video games, he's in toys, he was in the Suicide Squad movie. I'm really I mean, this is great. So that's kind of what I'm known for. I seem to be known for really odd, strange, violent characters.
Gerry, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us here. It's been a lot of fun.
That's been fun for me too.
Leave a comment below, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button for more behind the panel videos about your favorite comic book creators and stories.